Hey everyone, it's Chuck Hogan with Your Best Life, and welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. The app's completely free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV Sticks, and Roku and Roku Sticks. Also, all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Well, you know, I say this almost every time, but I'm going to say it again. Are you in for a treat tonight? We get to invite not only a guy who I admire on so many different levels, as a father, as a husband, as a business owner, operator, as an educator, as a world changer. This is the kind of fella that when you let into your life, magic happens. And why? Because he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the talk. Neil is one of those people that when you meet him, you'll go, this guy's for real. So I give to you Neil Tricarico, sales executive, sales strategist, sales, I will say guru extraordinaire. And we're not talking about sales tonight, y'all. So welcome, Neil. Hey, buddy. Great to see you.
You too, Chuck. Great to see you. Good to be connected with you. Great to be here with your audience.
Oh, thank you, man. You know, it's funny, you and I, in our conversations, I just feel like I've known you for decades, and I have from afar. What's really cool, though, is to see how we have so many different synergistic relationships, not just with people, but I'll say more so with life and value systems and looking at how things really kind of manifest together. So I know that you're a happily married man, been in love for many years, and you have 2 children? 3 children.
Yes, 2 children and a little doggy.
Wow. And your kids, boys, girls?
Yeah, my son Anthony will be 16 next month, and my daughter Belina will be 14 next month.
I'll tell you what, don't blink because it goes by so freaking fast. My youngest is 16. I have a middle daughter, Marina, at 19, and my son, who's 20, just turned 23, and he'll be graduating college. And it's like, I venture to say, it has been a humbling experience, one of which I would not change a thing. And that's what a gift. What a gift.
Well said. Well said.
You know, I know that you have spent so much time with some world changers, world leaders, and people who are making such a big difference in this world. And my question to you is what have you found has been some of the best advice that you've received from folks over the years when it comes to work life? And I'm going to put this in a very specific way: harmony, not balance. And I'm very, very deliberate when I say this because I as you can see, I almost have like a visceral reaction when people go, "Hey, work-life balance," and I'm like going, huh? Yeah. Like, does that even exist? Yeah. So, you know, from Deepak Chopra to Tony Robbins to all of these folks that you have been, I mean, literally like an executive VP in charge of sales and sales training. What do you say to folks? What are 1 or 2 of the scintillating things that you've gleaned from those distinctions of being in such high volume, high pressure environments over the years?
You know, that's a great question, Chuck, and one that, you know, I don't get often asked because most people ask me about, you know, with Tony Robbins, motivation, inspiration, drive, and, you know, with Deepak about spirituality and yoga and meditation, and Chet Holmes, God rest his soul, you know, about sales excellence and performance. And what I could share with you just quite transparently is none of each of those folks shared anything specifically with me about work-life harmony, but I was able to observe that in them. I was able to observe, so maybe it was my roles with them or how it worked, but what I could share with you is they told me very little, but they demonstrated very much. And I think across all 3, since those folks are the most recognizable, the profound sort of common thread was the importance of that ultimate why, and that your family was most important. And, you know, to the extent it's valuable, I'll share a brief story about Chet Holmes. You know, Chet Holmes, man, I mean, this is the godfather of pig-headed discipline. And, when we worked together with Tony to launch Business Mastery back in 2008, this guy worked more than anyone. And, on Memorial Day, for instance, when, I had my autoresponder on that I was out, and he had emailed me and he's like, damn you, what are you doing out? But I could share with you, it was in those moments, like when my daughter was born, felt even uncomfortable saying to him, hey, I'd like to take some time and be with her. He preempted and shared, like, these are the most important times of your life. Don't miss those. Take as much time as you need. Or within a couple of weeks of that, my best friend was on his deathbed and passing, and I was uncomfortable asking for time because I just had this time, for my daughter's birth. And again, without question, it was take those times, because if not for these reasons and these most important relationships, what are we really actually doing all this for?
That is such a great testament to the fact of purpose and why.
Yes.
And some people, I've actually had very spirited conversations with folks around harmony and balance. And they go, well, what's the difference between the two? I say, well, think of it this way. It's almost like listening to music. Music has a melody, it has a harmony. I don't oftentimes go, oh, I'm looking for the balance in a song. It's like going, they go, well, yeah, why? Well, tempo, beat, if you want to call it depth of tonality, there's something about synergy that makes it so attractive to start looking at it and going, okay, this feels a certain way.
Yes.
Where even in our earlier conversation today, so y'all don't know this, but again, he is a genius when it comes to sales processes and connectivity. And we were talking about transactional. Balance feels transactional at times rather than being opportunistic and synergistic and collaborative like harmony is. And this is where those subtle nuances start to come into play, at least in my own twisted brain with like 12 different voices going on all simultaneously. And I love what you said, which was no one gave you overt examples, but they showed you through their lifestyle and their living. And you were able to take that away. And what a beautiful story about Chet, by the way. I know that he was a very guiding force in your life and created a lot of different opportunities. And I'm going to phrase this a slightly different way. You created the opportunities by opening yourself up to the vulnerability of being able to have that kind of exposure. And not everyone has that depth. Not everyone has that ability to be able to feel and see their way through having that experience. So good on you. Good on you.
Thank you. And hey, if you might, something you just shared resonated with me so much so I got goosebumps. People do talk all the time about, work-life balance, and that seems very clear. I'm a very simple man. I think very simply. So I think about the balance and the scale, and balance to me sounds like fair, equal. And generally speaking, I understand what you're talking about with harmony, but the way you just described it really resonated with me. So you can see my speaker back here on the shelf. We're getting ready for a remodel. So I'm in the garage. This doubles as my office and my man cave. And I really enjoy some time in here just listening to music and being present. And you're so right, because I was trying to figure out, be prepared and anticipate what we've been talking about. When you think about song, and I love live music, especially jam bands, and the ebbs and flows and the intensity. And it's so true. There are moments in my life, whether it was, being an executive sales leader for Tony Robbins, and we were at events and I was gone for days, and that's a sacrifice of sorts, being away from your family. But in that jam band of the music, that was so intense and so fulfilling, right? And then to be able to go away here in a few weeks, for 10 days over the 4th of July weekend and completely unplug, like that's when that harmony and energy is amazing and strong on the family side. And I think it's important, especially as we're raising kids, is for them to see that as well. It's not black and white. It's not this equality, I am in business and I am, but that there's this harmony and how you've just described it, it really hit home for me.
Oh, thank you, man. And context matters. Like,
Yes.
a dance jam, and it's like going, well, is it a slow song
Yes.
or is it like something really up tempo? Is it
Mhm.
Michael Jackson? Is it Bruno Mars? Is
Yeah.
it Beyonce? Or is it more like, Tony Bennett or Frank? It's like, if people go,
Yeah.
wait, what? I go, oh, yeah, Lady Gaga, Tony Bennett. Hey, you put those two together and you get brilliance.
Yes.
So why do I go there? Well, there's no such thing as balance in that. It's
Mm.
actually the harmonization. It's the
Mhm.
collaboration of bringing together energy. And that's what
Yes.
really music is. You can measure the decibels. You can measure the frequencies where all this stuff is happening. And this is where those modalities of life come from. When we get to understand that it's not about just one facet of it. It's like, oh, okay. And people go, well, give me an example of like single faceted. I said, even rap is multifaceted, from Snoop
Yeah.
Dogg to Eminem to DMC to, DMX to, I said, it can get pretty crazy. Even
Yeah.
Kanye. Ye has his own way of doing stuff. And so I look at this, and this is the same context that I actually see relationships. So you can be loving and playful with your wife. You can be intimate with your wife. You can be business co-owners in a business together. And it's like, okay, so there's not just one modality. There's all these different identities that go along with it. So for
Yes.
you at home, this is, ask yourself this question. And you've heard me use this terminology before, so I'm going to apologize for being redundant. But ordinary things done and said consistently produce extraordinary results when you get the lessons. You're not the same person in the boardroom as you are in the bedroom. At least I hope. Okay? You're not the same person in the bedroom as you are in church. You're not the same person in church as you are on the playground.
That's right.
So we get to decide where this harmony, this melody, this context of life. And I would say, how are you looking to feel?
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm so grateful for this conversation with you, brother, because it actually just deepens and enriches that whole ideology of, okay, is there just one way to find harmony? And I would go, okay, so what are some of your rituals, Neil, that you find for you help serve you when you've been in service to other people and you've done the sales training and you've gone through and you're working on all these modalities where you're at C-suites or executive or corporate levels, and now you get to come forward home,
Yes.
and how are some of the ways that you reset self so you're able to be present? And we'll talk about this, presence versus focus, because
Yes.
that's a big part of harmonization within family in particular.
Yes. I would say the number one thing that I do to reset is meditation.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I'll share another hopefully brief story with you as well. But
Please.
when I first met Deepak Chopra, I had no idea who he was. I had come down from Silicon Valley. I was in software sales, and my wife and I decided we were going to quit our jobs and move down here to the sweet spot of the universe in San Diego. And I wanted to get into sales leadership. I was looking for an opportunity to be a player coach. And so I made a decision. I had this idea, and I created this one pager, and I sat with the type of environment I was looking for, and I visualized it. And that's a whole nother powerful story. But I made a commitment to myself and to her, and we were living with my mother-in-law at the time. And my mother-in-law, like, hey, I'm going to apply for every job on Craigslist. I mean, that's dating myself, but that's where the jobs were in 2004. And I
Yep.
was just going to take them all, and just whether they were practice interviews or however it was going to be. And so I got this interview for this Chopra Center, Deepak Chopra. And I'm like, oh, this is weird. This is woo woo. I don't know who this is. And my wife was like, no way. You made a commitment to take all the jobs. And my mother-in-law, like, she jumped out of her seat. She's like, look at my bookshelf. Look at all these books. How do you not know who Deepak was? So long story short, I met him, and it was a very interesting time because the investors had replaced him as CEO, and someone else was brought on to lead the business. But I had to meet with him to get his buy-in, his sign-off to lead the organization. And so I spoke to him about, hey, we're not going to look at marketing as marketing. We're going to look at marketing as education. And we're not going to look
Uh,
at sales as sales. We're going to look at sales as service. And so I broke through with him. But what he said to me is, he said, you must eat our cooking. So if you're going to be a representative and you're going to lead the team and we're going to be serving in this way, you need to meditate. You need to practice yoga, and you need to learn about Ayurveda. And of all the things over, it's been almost 20 years now since that meeting, the meditation has stayed with me. Chuck, I can't impress upon you enough. Meditation for me is like taking a shower. I meditate in the morning and I meditate in the evening. Those are my resets. My wife and I wake up together at 5:30. We go into the love corner, we call it. Our doggy Kiwi follows us. She's got a little meditative poof, and I'll do this. And much like showering, I may miss a shower here or there, but if I miss too many showers, no one wants to be around me. So the number one thing for me for reset, long answer to your short question, is that meditation practice.
Dude, I love it. And I will remind people that spiritual, emotional, and physical hygiene are all important. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and
sir.
it's true that when we sleep at night, we cleanse, our mind cleanses. When we work out, we cleanse our bodies. When we fast, when we eat, when we create nutrition. And I would say that meditation is probably one of the most underrated and underutilized skill sets and engagements that people can actually enter into that provide so much
Yes.
nutrition. Being able to find your energetic center. And I would also submit to people, and this is one of Deepak's greatest, I'll say, contributions, at least in my life, is I heard him one time say, let's get basic. Okay, let's go back to basics. And he said, yes, you're made of photons, neutrons, and electrons. That's baseline chemistry. I mean, that's like freshman year in high school. And everyone's like going, okay, can't argue that. And you're like going, then you're a being of light. Those are all units and measurements of light. And what if your memories and your cognitive, if you want to call it recognition and recall, isn't stored in your mind, but this is just tuned in to an energetic frequency that allows you to tap in. And it's like, ooh, okay, now you've gone really woo-woo and deep. Like we're talking fifth dimension. But what I love about this, is that it provides now this great quantum theory about harmony.
Yes.
Because it's not about whether or not you can tune in, is whether or not you're open to tuning in. And this is why some people like the Shirley MacLaines of the world that can channel different frequencies, and they go, come on, is that for real? And I go, hey, there is this beautiful story about a little boy who was riding his bike. He fell, hit his head, true story. When he got up, he was fine, but he started having these voices and memory recall of a man who was a pilot in World War II. Now, this little boy was 5. And
wow.
He's having a recall of a pilot from World War II who was shot down over Germany. Now, here's what gets real interesting. He remembered so many things about his sister who lived in Trenton, New Jersey. And they didn't live that far away. They were like, I think, Staten Island or something like that. So they went and visited. And he starts telling stories to her of when they were little kids together.
Wow.
And he's 5.
Wow.
And his family's like, oh, we had to bring him to meet you because he was so adamant. And at first she thought, okay, what book did you give your kid to read? And they're like, none of this was published. Her nickname, her doll's name, their favorite pet when they were growing up, which happened to be a billy goat. And I'm like, this is the most crazy thing. But the truth of the matter is that we're all interconnected. And the harmony of life, body, mind, and spirit, personally and professionally, is a measurement. And the measurement is your emotional states that you live in most often. And this is where people oftentimes go, oh, dude, okay, you lost me. Yes. And I go, I'm sorry. I really am. But it's also one of the reasons that I ask people, how are they feeling, and not how they're doing. Doing is a cognitive response.
Yeah.
We need a laundry list. I mean, literally, you might as well fill out every sheet of 1,000 roll toilet paper with a square. And it's like, okay, how I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. I go, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
And it takes all of that and goes,
Love that.
How I feel, and this is the quality of my life. It's in direct proportion to how you feel. So
Yes.
that I love what you said, and that meditation part. What would you say to someone who's living in confusion right now, who is like, okay, I'm in overwhelm and I don't know how to stop the craziness,
Yes.
the kerfuffle, the noise. What would you say to someone who's dealing in that space right now, Neil?
That's a really powerful question because the world seems hyper accelerated towards that confusion, towards that kerfuffle, towards, that overwhelm.
Mm,
And, you know, I would say two things to them. One would be external, is I would say to seek out a meditation practice.
mhm.
I can't speak to it enough. And people, it's so fascinating for something so simple like meditation and just quieting your mind. There's such a tremendous amount of expectations
Yes.
around what's supposed to happen in meditation when it's really just you're seeking that space between
Yeah.
that nothingness, that stillness, that quietness. I might sit for 20, 30 minutes, and whether or not I'm aware that I've experienced that gap or that stillness or silence in between, it's the repetition, it's the practice. Now, the
Oh,
beautiful thing is there are so many methods of
oh,
meditation, right? So I'm a creature of habit. I've stuck with a mantra-based meditation because I just subscribe to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But people are like, oh, where do you find this? Where do you find this? That 20 to 30 minutes twice a day is 40 to 60 minutes. Well, I'll tell you what, the impact of that 40 to 60 minutes, I'm requiring less sleep, I'm more present, things like that. But I would share with the person is a few things, is to go seek out a meditation practice. I have a dear friend and mentor, a man by the name of David G. Davidji. I wasn't thinking of like pumping anyone, but he was our leader at the Chopra Center. And he's opened up this world of all the different possible types of meditation. So whether it's sound meditation, whether it's a 5-minute meditation, whether it's a
mm,
walking meditation, whether it's singing bowls, my commitment to you is there is something out there, a practice that you can find
yes.
that will serve you to find that space in between. Then the other distinction I would just share, personally, a big shift that's happened in my life in the last few years, especially I could speak to my personal experience. I'm highly driven. I've come up in the sales profession. So my career has almost entirely been about goals and outcomes and results and
Yeah.
goals and outcomes and results. And a dear mentor of mine that very few people know about, Steve Lashansky, challenged me a few years ago. Have I transcended goals now into purpose, into fulfillment? What am I most interested in? And it's serving others, young people coming up, my children, my family. So another way to get out of all of that confusion and kerfuffle and everything, you hear Tony talk about the secret to living is giving, but just shift and understand, like, not so much what am I seeking to do or achieve or create, but what is my purpose in life? What is, Deepak talks about it as dharma. And even if you don't know the answer to that question, if you ask yourself that and you live your life in a way that's seeking purpose, things like acceptance show up more often, trust,
Oh,
that space between. So I don't know. Those are a few things I can
oh,
think
I
of.
love it, man. It's again, I was asked, and someone said, actually, I had someone who asked my wife. We were just on a trip with John Gray a couple weeks ago in Rwanda, and it was remarkable. It's all about family and relationship. And someone said, "Gosh, you and Chuck been together for 35 years." And they asked Julie, and they said, "What's your secret?" And she goes, "I choose to be happy."
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, wow,
Yeah.
awesome, babe. I said, "Me too."
Yeah.
Um, isn't that a coinky dink?
Yeah.
And to your point, I actually had someone who asked me, and they go, "Yeah, Chuck, the noise, the cacophony, the." I said, "Slow down,
Yeah. Yeah.
breathe.
Yeah.
Your body, there's this natural organic property that when we reset, And I love what you represented, which was no mind.
Yeah.
Tony has this saying, and in context, it makes a lot of sense. Out of context, it can be really confusing. It's head dead, heart smart.
Mm, yeah.
And it's not that your brain isn't a beautiful apparatus, that it is a filtering medium that deals in binary,
Yeah.
black, white, yes, no, good, evil. And it's like, okay, then how do we find the harmony? And I said, slow down and ask yourself, what does this really mean? And what am I feeling?
Yes.
In fact, I would even presuppose that I would say, how are you feeling? What does that mean to you? And do you need to feel a different way instead?
Mm,
And it's like,
yeah.
sometimes the answer is no.
Yes.
I needed this lesson now. It's like, this was so imperative now in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And we can question intent when we start to judge. And
Yes.
this is where we start getting into these really kind of crazy nuances. And people are going, okay, so Chuck, Neil, y'all are crazy. And I go,
Totally.
and what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Elon Musk has been called crazy.
Yeah.
Einstein called crazy. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett. I mean, they're like going, oh, these guys are nuts. And it's like, ooh, so genius has a very fine line between being eccentric, and it's almost like what they used to say about the magi, or people that, alchemists, and people that were able to ostensibly perform magic.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, they're insane. Oh, they're devil worshippers. I go, no, I'm actually a man of God and very faithful. And I look at it a different way. And that is, I don't believe that there's innate limitations in anything.
Yeah.
When you have a strong enough fire within you.
Yes. Yes.
We reared our children to have this very clear understanding. That is, it's not that you can accomplish anything you put your mind to. It's that if you have enough heart and drive and integrity, your mind will find a way. Because the concept isn't whether or not it's achievable. It's just how.
Yes.
More so, why?
Yeah.
Why is it important to you? Why is that drive there? Why does Elon Musk take on NASA? You're like going, okay, we thought you were a little crazy taking on the whole automobile industry. And how many people have Teslas now? And I'm like going, and it's branched this nirvana. You go, oh, Nissan Leaf did it first, Toyota Prius. And I go, apparently they didn't do it at the level that Tesla did, because holy smokes.
Yes.
And then you're like going, oh, rockets that land themselves. And you're like going, yeah, NASA, finest, aeronautical and astrological engineers, astrophysicists in the world. And you're like going, and this guy's like, going, yeah, we're going to send the first rocket up with a Tesla Roadster in it, just because we can. So I'm loving this conversation. It just opens up so many different modalities and possibilities for people.
Yes.
One of the things that we have aspired within Your Best Life to do, in fact, that's one of the reasons why the show's called this. It's actually based on the community that my partners Preston Brown and Dean Innes and myself create, along with Megan McShane, who and Jesse and Swartzberg and Phoebe Fosmo and others. Why? We found that like-minded people have this drive to continue to grow.
Yes.
And I go, I love that, because the universal rule is, if you're not growing, you're
dying.
Yeah, and they're like, with coming from both yours and Neil's brains, because that was very absolute. And I go, well, that's the universal law.
Yeah.
On the other side, expansion comes from being around like-hearted people.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this earlier about trust sales. We talked about trust integration and rapport and all these things that go along with building that level of integrity and collaboration. And I go, ooh. So what is it? And you hit on it. And I just want to bring this full circle for everyone.
Great.
How you show up.
Yes.
Who's coming to the party? Where's your energy center? Because you're the same person, but it doesn't mean that your energy is always, I'll say, fluctuating at the same frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
we all have 10 hertz days where you're like going, wah, wah, wah. This is like not a good day. And then we have 50 hertz day and you're like, I'm so in love. I love my kids. You know, that's the most beautiful sunrise. Did you see the sunset? Oh, this sushi never tasted so good. You know,
Yes.
you're like going, okay, and everything's just perfect. And then I'm going, wow, you kind of like are a unicorn, aren't you?
Yeah.
Dust and unicorns not flying everywhere. I go, if you have little girls, you know what I'm talking about with unicorns not. Just
For sure.
so what would you say if I said, Neil, give me the top 3 things I can do to help elevate myself today?
That's a great question. I mean, what are the top 2 or 3 things I could do to elevate myself today? I mean, I think thinking about a bit, I think elevation for elevation's sake is, at least in my experience, very difficult to achieve. And certainly as the years go by for me, I'm not elevating to anything that doesn't bring me something back multiple fold.
Love
So I
that.
think there's a pre-question in that says, what is it? And again, we talk about Deepak and the Dharma or purpose in life. What is it that drives you?
Mm,
And what is it? And I want to make sure, because I'm thinking about this concept of, the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment,
yes.
and that, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I think the when you find those things that bring you the most joy in your life,
Yes.
elevation, you just all of a sudden realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm here, I'm in Dharma, I'm in purpose. My my son is this most amazing boy, and he's so different from me in every way possible. And that was the lesson and experience. But what elevates me to let go of my expectations of him and to just be connected is to understand what matters most to him, what
Yes.
fulfills him, what brings him joy. And when I'm coming from that space, without expectations, of just openness and curiosity, there's massive connection.
Oh,
With my wife and daughter, it's a little bit easier. So, I don't know if I'm really answering your
no,
question,
you
but
are. You
yeah,
are.
if I've got to do something to get into some place, to be at a level of some expectation that's requiring me to think about and do it, I've probably got myself in a situation of something that's really not interesting to me.
Yes.
So one of the things I'm doing as I'm getting older, and I guess having some experience, is I'm learning to say no. Right? If I've got to do almost anything to get to a certain place to meet that expectation or that experience, probably not the right place for me.
That's so beautiful. My dad once shared with me. He said that the 2 most powerful words are the ones that have the least syllables. He said yes and no. And the fact that maybe has 2 syllables in it is the least empowering term you can use, because it just all it does is create indecision.
Yes.
And I so applaud you for going back to being your best and not always having to be doing your best. We grew up, and in fact, we've raised all of our children with this ideology that you can be doing your best but never being your best. When you're being your best, you'll always do your best.
Yes.
And such a simple concept, and it really derives from one thing, and that is understanding at your core how you need to feel most often.
Mhm.
It is something that is so dismissed, and I actually believe that meditation brings us back to that no mind, which resets our entire emotional well-being
Yes.
center, where we're going, okay, now what's driving me is emotion, what's driving me is feeling. And people go, oh, you're a feeler. And I go, well, isn't everyone? And I actually had someone call me out on this, and
Really?
I was like, okay. They go, well, give me an example. I said, you're driving in your car and out of the corner of your eye, you spy this vehicle and it veers right across the nose of your car and exits the highway at just a high rate of speed. I said, where are you living right now? They go, oh, oh, you son of a billy goat.
Yeah.
Like,
Anger.
who do you think you are? And I said, now I'm going to tell you that's a father who just realized who his son has been critically injured. He's trying to get him to the emergency room. That's the exit he needs to take. He goes, is he all right?
Yeah.
Wait a second. You were just like the unholy punisher who was going to castrate this guy with an axe, behead him at the chopping block, and now all of a sudden you're Gandhi.
Yes.
What changed? And he goes, well, you told me a different story. And I said, so there's always a story. And you don't know which one's real or which one's just perceived. What if you always erred on the side of discretion and giving people the benefit of doubt and valor, and not passing judgment, but actually being more intrigued, concerned, and appreciative?
Yes. Yes.
It shifts the narrative completely. And I go, wow. And where's your energy? You dropped down to like 10 hertz because you were, oh, you son of a billy goat. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh, are they okay?
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, now you're at 30 or 40, maybe even 50 hertz because you're concerned and genuinely caring. Wow. And they go, ooh. And this goes back to what one of our mentors said, the big guy with the teeth. It's all, you know. And Tony says this, that he goes, when you can trade expectation with appreciation. And just that level of being able to integrate and having that level of connection, I go, that makes the difference, because now we are not judging. And I love measuring. I love measuring.
Yes.
It's one of those scenarios. It's kind of like temperature outside. Like, I don't know where you're in San Diego, so I'm sure it's balmy and tropic.
It's warm.
You got some June gloom, though.
Yeah, we do.
We've had an inversion layer here in Dallas, and it's been muggy. We were just in San Antonio yesterday. It was 110 heat index. I don't know who you are, Celsius or Fahrenheit, regardless of what the number is, the outcome was it's hot. You know, it's like I think Tennyson and maybe even Mark Twain would have said it was sultry. It was a sultry day. And you're like, what? No, that just means you're sweating like a banshee. And that's the difference. If I go, oh, it's 97 with 78% humidity, and then someone else goes, and I don't even know what the conversion rate is, so I'm going to make it up. I'm going to say, oh, it's 33 or 32 and muggy out. And I go, okay, I don't resonate with 32. 32 to me, I'm like going, is that Fahrenheit? Because that's freaking cold.
Yeah.
So it's almost snowing.
Yes.
So the numbers and the measurement, we judge based on our perspective of our understanding of the situation. And I go, yes, but that can be a very different interpretation.
Yes.
So where do you find most challenges in your life have come from?
That's a great question. I think, you know, again, recently with the perspective, I think, and actually, quite frankly, I'm really into this book that I'm slow reading called Essentialism. And so I think the challenges that come up in my life predominantly come up in two areas: taking on too much. Okay, so doing too many things and moving outside of what's essential. And it's also tied to the second thing, having too many things that are important to me creates indecision. So when I'm least challenged is when I'm clear on what's most important to me, and it's not very much. You know, it's faith, family, and I mean, we're talking about harmony, so I don't even want to say my career, but I am so blessed that my dharma in you know, demystifying sales and having an impact on human beings and sales professionals is, to me, the same way, you know, in that phase of my life, what breathing air is with my wife or raising my children. So I think I'm challenged when I'm pulled into things outside of what really fulfill me. So that gets back to the elevation. And I would rather go deeper on those three things. go deeper on my faith, go deeper on my family. I love the experiences, go deeper on my impact in career. And then I'm also finding if I go too wide, it creates indecision. And they're like, I don't know if this is right, but they're like inversely correlated. If I'm
Yep.
making decisions, like your dad said, I was really struck with this. If I'm making decisions, yes or no, just by the nature of that, that's causing me to focus only on what matters most to me. You know,
It
my
does.
family, I also speak about like my friends and experiences. So if I'm challenged, I have to understand two things. Number one is it something outside of my control? If it
Mm,
is, then I have to move towards acceptance, which is the hardest thing for me, quite frankly, in my life. Things out of my control and accepting them. But if it's something that is in my control, the question is simple: is I've either moved outside of what's essential to me, and that's caused me to have indecision around what matters most, or my indecision has allowed me to expand beyond what's essential in my life.
yes, I've experienced the same thing, and it came from expectation of
Yeah.
wanting to be that guy that
Yeah.
always creates value. And I
Yeah.
found very quickly that forgiveness creates freedom. And
Gosh,
when I
that's a
started
good
to
one.
forgive myself for the things that I don't know and that I haven't yet cultivated the level of skill yet that's necessary, real or perceived, in order to essentially tackle that scenario, then I have opted at times to default to someone else with greater experience
Mm,
or ask for mentorship if it's something that I find energetically or spiritually I find alignment with. And it's like,
yeah.
hmm, okay, why is it so intriguing? And to your point, I spent 22 years with Mr. Robbins in contribution for that very reason. I've
Mhm.
spent time now in choosing not to play small anymore. And not that it was playing small in his environment, it just wasn't my full identity. Because
Mhm.
when you're in someone else's sandbox, there's a different set of rules.
Yes.
And
Yes,
we get
there
to
are.
abide by those rules. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I just found for myself that the limitations started to outweigh the way I needed to feel most often, which I had denied for a long time. And it's kind of embarrassing to say, but I did not value self. I
Mhm.
valued my skill. I valued my heart and integrity to be able to contribute to others, but that didn't necessarily coincide with my self value and forgiveness of self for elevating.
Yes.
And it was like, wow, how can you live in both? And the truth was, you don't.
That's right.
Something has to give. At some point in time, you have either a breakthrough, nirvana, your dark kicks in, and you're like, what? Ooh, clarity, light bulb. You're like, what? So I heard this great analogy. Are you seeking to find your way through the dark with a laser pointer,
Mm.
a flashlight, a floodlight, or do you just freaking flip the light switch and all the lights go on?
That's great.
And I was like, holy smokes, because there are some people that are so myopic and they're like, okay, I can see across the room. And I mean, literally, they're looking through a pinhole and they're like going,
Yeah.
okay, this is, and I was like, no. And then they go, oh, flashlight. We go, well, that's a little bigger. Okay, chair, ottoman, dresser. Oh, person. Whoa. Okay. Floodlight. You're like, going, okay, at least that side of the room's lit up now. And they go, oh, well, I just choose to go flip the light switch on. And then that way I get to see and feel everything. And then I can make a determination, open minded, open hearted, open souled, with
Yeah.
intelligence quotient, with hubris, with pride, with humor. And it's like, wow, that feels, and they go, yeah, like 50 hertz, not 10 hertz,
Yes.
and it's like, okay, simple examples that give so much clarity. And I go, are you just groping your way in, through the dark with a laser pointer and hoping that you're going to outline every single thing and commit it to memory with a dot? Or
Yes.
go ahead and open up and be open to all the possibilities and then ask a better question, which is, how do I need to feel?
Love that. Love that.
it shifts so much, man.
So
So
much.
question I have for you is, in your expansion and living in this space and this grace, in your occupation, because I don't believe in jobs, I believe in occupations. I believe in having something that manifests so much desire within you and that it fuels you, it lifts you up, and that's that elevation that we started talking about. Where can people find out more about you, Neil? Because in today's world, every single institution that I know of has some monicum of
Yeah.
sales in it. And I love what you said, which is demystifying sales. So if it's a solopreneur, someone who's at a corporate level where they're trying to build culture within their teams, if it's real estate, if it's goods and services, products, whatever the case might be, where can someone come and learn more about who you are, what you do, and your approach? Because I've found you to be insanely valuable, and I highly suspect that there's a few people out amongst the 200 million that are viewing this tonight that can actually find value in you.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate it. I mean, I would like to offer up that the best place to connect with me is on, any of the 3 or 4 social media. If you're looking at a business perspective, find me on LinkedIn. If you can see the spelling of my name there, Neil Tricarico, I'd love to connect with you there. Facebook, you can find me there, Neil Tricarico. Instagram, Neil Tricarico as well. Most of the work that I've been doing up until this point has been directly with clients through our brand Ultimate Growth. So you can find us at Ultimate Growth Inc. But I'm really excited to share, and I may be jumping the gun here with my partner, but in the coming weeks, you can find us at salesmagic.ai. So sales magic, but magic is MAGIQ. So salesmagic.ai. This is going to be the world's forefront platform to pair organizations and businesses to match them with top talent. And I'm really excited about this because we've done tremendous work placing professionals in organizations and training professionals to be better in sales organizations using our sales strengths identifier AI. But what we've realized is we've limited those opportunities to client opportunities and placement opportunities. Okay. When if I'm really wanting to be congruent in my mission to demystify sales as something other than this jacket we put on or these tools we learn to manipulate or overcome, but to have much larger impact, we need to get out in a bigger way. But I think if you found any value in our talk today, I would love to hear from you, in social media, DM me if you'd like to take the conversation further, because I could talk sales and growth all day, but I was so pleased. And you remember the text, Chuck, when you said we were going to talk about life and balance. And, the last thing I would share, just unsolicited, I don't know if you have a question around this, and we're running out of time, but if I can, we've talked about all these tremendous names. I don't know how in the world I got blessed with mentors like Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, Chad Holmes. But the person that I want to acknowledge the most in my life is my wife. She believed in me before I believed in myself. She empowered me to move past this belief that I had grown up with, that I needed to be a doctor, dentist, or lawyer and have a job, to transform into the entrepreneur that I am today, the life that I have today. And I thank her as often as I can for letting me be myself. So I'd be remiss to not acknowledge her in all this.
Hey, listen, and I'm with you, brother. I married up big time, and for the last 35 years, I've been blessed. So, Neil, thank you. Thank you, brother. And I so love and appreciate you for your time, talent, and gracing us with your knowledge and your presence. I'm going to remind all of our listeners that this show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check us out for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Neil, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate you.
Right back at you, brother.